I wanted to have you because I've been really, I've never really cared about politics in my life. And I've never also felt this way I do, the way that I do about what's happening in this country right now. And I believe in you like so wholeheartedly, just as a human and a leader. And I thought to myself, like every day, I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? Like how can I, explain to people? I think there's so much misinformation and there's so many assumptions. And then I think a lot of times, people are scared to ask or they're getting their information from social media, which is ironic because I will post this on social media, but I'm doing it with the source. So it feels less ironic, I suppose. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself, the deputy leader of the Conservative Party and just the most inspirational woman. I just wanted to ask you questions that maybe seem very silly to you or direct to you because you're so involved in politics, but we have a week to go and assumptions are too dangerous right now. So I actually asked a lot of young people I know, different questions, women, and I'm hoping I can kind of just go through them with you and you can answer as honestly as you can.
Sure. Well, first off, I will say thanks for doing this. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of like everything that you've done, the whole story of how you got there, and how you got to where you are. And the most important thing is that you used your platform for things that you care about.
Always.
And you don't see that, frankly, I mean, at least I don't see that in the world that you're in. And I think that probably we're seeing that less and less in the world that I'm in. And that's probably why there is this divide. So like big fan of your like the embodiment of the Canadian story that you have. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm excited to talk to people who will click on this and take a listen.
And like everyone, please, I've never interviewed anyone in my life. So as per me, I'm starting a week before the election with the deputy leader of the Conservative Party. No big deal. First interview. I'm going to do the best I can. Bear with me. Okay.
Amazing.
This is a big one. Where do you stand on a woman's right to choose?
Probably where most of the people that you know and that I know stand. I'm a pro-choice conservative. There's no secret about that. But I have to say this, like there is a lot of fear mongering on this issue,
Big
and
time.
instead of anything that's based in reality, what we're seeing is a whole bunch of assumptions that just aren't true. So I'll say this: it is established Conservative Party policy that there would be no new laws passed on topics like abortion, and we can go into same-sex marriage, and it's been that way since the early 2000s. And Pierre Poilievre, who's running to be prime minister and who genuinely wants to change this country after I think a lost liberal decade, has said that multiple times. And I'll tell you this, as a woman who's married to another woman, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't be running if I didn't believe that was true. So I'll allay all of your concerns. It has been party policy for more than 20 years. It will remain that way. That no new laws passed on this, and the importation of U.S. politics into our narrative, frankly, I think has been unfair and a tactic of those who don't want to talk about their record, and I mean the liberals. I would want to talk about anything except for the last 10 years if I was them.
I totally agree. And it's why it's so crazy to me, even just knowing you, looking at you, and having people tell me they won't vote conservative because conservatives hate gay people. And it's disheartening because, I'm the kind of person I stand up for anybody's rights. I have so many, LGBTQIA, friends, and I believe everyone should be who they are. I think, and maybe you can clarify this for me a bit. I think that in this moment, our country is basically on fire, and we are trying to prioritize the things that we need to fix like immediately. For the most part, I do believe we're a very diverse country. We are built on diversity. And the fact that you are sitting before me as deputy leader in and of itself says to me enough that Pierre Poilievre and no other conservatives hate gay people.
No, I don't really care, what color you are, what language you speak, when you got here, who you're married to. There's a place for you in the Conservative Party, and that's always been the case, certainly since I've been involved. And Pierre says a lot of this is we're not in the business of governing your life. It's in terms of what your choices are, who you're married to, what you want to do with your body, what you want to drive, what you want to eat. That's not the job of a government. It's not the job of a government bureaucrat. The job of the government is to keep people safe, to keep our borders protected, to make sure that our military is funded, to make sure that people have the jobs for today and for tomorrow, that young people can buy a home, that crime, chaos, and drugs and disorder are limited in scope and not out of control the way they are. That's the job of the guy who wants to lead the government, not the other way around. In fact, I think it's the liberals who want to control all of these things, certainly in terms of narrative, but also in terms of like real control in your everyday life. Conservatives
Give me an example of that. Like, what would be an example of
tell
them
you what
wanting
kind
to
of car to
control?
drive, whether you can drive a gas powered car or an electric car. That should be your choice, and the market should dictate that. And the big one, which I think a lot of people that would be watching you right now, the censorship of speech online, the fact that we can't get news in Canada on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll talk a little
One of
bit
my
about that.
questions.
But like, we're not in the business of limiting your speech. We want people to be able to do whatever they want in the confines of the law, to live a good life. That's the Canadian promise: to be able to afford a home, to be able to feed their families, to be able to work hard and get ahead. The promise that my parents had when they came here.
So then why did the conservatives vote against the $10 a day daycare?
Well, so here's the thing on the $10 daycare. When you wrap it up into a major budget and a major document that has put us in debt and has run inflation out of control in this country, this government, the prime minister before this one, so Justin Trudeau spent more than all prime ministers combined, which is why the cost of groceries and the cost of gas and the cost of heating your home has all gone up to the point where families can't afford that. That was all in the budget. So we support the idea of $10 daycare, and frankly, all the social programs that exist right now. If you have them, you're not going to lose them. We should put that fact on the table.
So you're not taking away
No,
anything that
in fact, we think the bill doesn't go far enough, and it doesn't do enough. The current Liberal policy of $10 day daycare is only like government sanctioned providers.
okay.
But those providers are only a small piece of the overall pie, making, I think, the programs exclusionary to wide swaths of Canadians. So maybe your kids go to an independent provider, like somebody in your neighborhood,
Like I did. I went to my local Chabad.
Yeah, that would be, a religious driven daycare. I went to I call this, like, I went to some lady in her basement who had,
Yeah,
who
exactly.
was an independent provider. It turned out fine. In fact,
Are you kidding?
it
There's
was
so many
great.
of those that are beautiful and wonderful.
So
I know
we
lots of
think
people who've
that
done
those
that.
people should be able to be included in the $10 a day daycare program. And then, of course, the ones that are sort of outside of the normal realm. Like, it's not that every parent works from 9 to 5. We see more and more shift work. We see the night stuff. We want to
Yep.
make it sort of more flexible.
Okay.
So that's kind of the deal on daycare. But the idea that the idea of one size fits all doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and that's, I think, the problem with the Liberal plan. I think we need some flexibility when it comes to childcare, and I think parents know best, not Ottawa, on this
I
and so many other things.
I think that sometimes things, like you said, we're getting we can't help it. People are getting their news off of Instagram and TikTok, and we're not allowed to see actual news. So it's very opinion based. So some of these questions are, like you said, fear mongering, or, trying to spin things in a way where, well, the Conservative Party voted against this, but in reality, what you're explaining to me is
Yeah, we
because,
voted against the budget, and I would vote
yes,
against that budget 100
right.
times because I think that it's put Canadians so far in debt on big things that this country doesn't need, like foreign aid funding to despots and dictators, like $21 billion on consultants, which, by the way, equals about $1,400 per Canadian family in taxes. Those are the
It's
things that I think that people ought to know.
right. I actually don't feel this way. But there's some people who think Pierre gives off this kind of this conceited, rude, sort of kind of ick factor kind of situation. I personally don't feel that way. I feel like I'm so sick of being kind and nice or different. And we are dealing in a world right now where, especially being nice, in the forefront, or being nice when you're in a debate, or being nice when you're going up against the leaders that we're going up against in a world that is so divided. It doesn't work for me. I want someone strong. I want someone who's going to get the job done. So this doesn't bug me. But what do you want to say to people who have these preconceived notions about him, and that he is not a nice person, that he's a conceited person?
Yeah, I don't see
I
that.
know
But
you don't see that. We've talked
here's
about it. I don't either, but this is a question, so I'm asking.
yeah. So I'll happy to answer your questions here, and I'll answer your questions
Don't tell
with
me why he's a nice guy.
I'll give you a story. I think he's a generational politician for a couple of reasons. What I've known for a long time, and sort of the drive and the quest for to drive excellence out of everybody around him. I think that's a quality that you would want in anybody who's your boss. But here's like the personal part of it. This is a guy who comes from humble beginnings, and I associate that with with the story of so many Canadians. My story's not
Oh, no.
dissimilar, but adopted by two school teachers, from given up for adoption by an unwed teenage mother, and sort of worked hard for everything he got, and he spent his entire life figuring out, how to restore the promise that he himself got, the promise that if you worked hard, you can do anything, you can be anyone, and I'll tell you where this comes out. The very fact that he's crisscrossed the country. So it's been a couple years now that he's been the leader of the party. And I don't know if you've seen these massive rallies of people who are sort of gravitating towards him, and not because not because I think politicians or anything in this country are rock stars, because they are so hopeless in this country in their position, that they are looking for somebody to help them out. And in these rallies, and it's been less so during the campaign, or probably not at all during the campaign because of the pace of a 35-day campaign, which we're in right now, he spent hours and hours and hours standing at the front of the room and shaking hands with anybody who came there who wanted to shake hands with him. And sometimes these rooms are thousands of people. And he heard every single one of those stories. And to have somebody like in the, to outside of the Ottawa bubble, like, these aren't the politicians that I gravitate towards, are not the ones who sit in their offices in Ottawa and give you the Ottawa knows best. I think it's a guy who's willing to stand at the front of the room for hours after he's given a speech and a rally, and hear these stories of the mom who can't put food on her table, who's watering down milk because she can't afford it, the guy who's taping his boots together because he can't afford a new pair to go to work. I don't think that people would stand at the front of the room for hours and hours on end. Sometimes these lineups went on for 4 or 5, 6 hours after a rally. Like that, you gotta like. I don't know what kind of person to do this.
I get it.
I feel like I spend quite a bit of time trying to talk to as many people as I can. I probably amongst one of the more accessible, like my entire constituency in Thornhill. I don't know what I'm gonna do about this, but they have my cell phone number. I'm in
Yeah,
like the
you're gonna have
WhatsApp,
to fix it.
yeah, like WhatsApp groups of
I
like
don't know. You're gonna have to get like a
neighborhoods.
burner phone or something for special
That's what I
people.
think. That's what I think.
I better have your number.
Yeah, I'll give you the number.
Okay, I want to make sure that I cover things. One of the things, and I employ I employ only women, as you know, and I employ a lot of young women, and they want to know specifically what the plan is so that they will be able to afford a house in their lifetime.
Well, look, I think you start at the point of where we are right now. Here's a liberal record.
That's
So
fair.
in 10 years, housing prices have doubled the from coast to coast, no matter where you are. In Toronto, it used to take you 30 years to pay off a mortgage, and now it takes you just under 30 years to save for a down payment. So the fundamental question in this election is you want to re-elect the same MPs and the same ministers, the same cabinet
I
ministers.
agree with you. I think it's insanity, but what are you gonna do?
So here's our plans specifics. They've been promising greater housing. Here's how you do it. One, we're going to reward cities to permit over 15% more home building each year with additional federal funding while reducing the infrastructure funding proportionally for cities that miss their targets. So if you build, you get rewarded, and if you don't, you get penalized, like exactly how it works in the real world. We're going to require cities to permit high density housing around federally funded transit stations. And that's going to be conditional on receiving federal funding for other things. We're going to require cities to pre-permit housing while getting federal funds in order to get federal funds for roads and bridges and transit. Here's some big ones. We're going to axe the GST on new homes under a million three. So that
So
saves
I'm
Canadians.
25 years old and I'm
Yeah.
looking at you and I'm saying, because I look 25. Um, let's just pretend. I'm looking at you and I'm saying, Melissa, I want to be able to buy a house.
Sure. So
So
here's the big
so
ones.
the GST is a big one for
So the big
me
GST is a
at
big one.
25.
It's a 65,000 on the price of a
It's
new home.
huge.
We're also going to incentivize municipalities to cut the building taxes. So most of what you pay in a home is actually the cost of taxes. It's not, it's not the actual home. So incentivize municipalities with 50% on every dollar spent, up to 50,000 for savings. So that takes your savings hopefully up to $100,000. Axe the GST on new rental housing construction in case you're not ready to buy a home. And identify 15% of federal lands on buildings to sell within the first 100 days of becoming government. And what's that going to do is going to allow us to permit very, very quickly on those federal lands and get housing built and pre-zone those lands so builders can break ground immediately. And prioritize builders that want to build affordable homes, especially for young Canadians that have been priced out. Like, I think it's insane in this country that if you work hard and you do everything right, that an entire generation of people have been priced out of a house. Like, I couldn't imagine trying to get into the housing market now. Like, I
My
couldn't
first house
afford.
I bought, it was just under $400,000. And it was a great semi. It was at like St. Clair and Bathurst, kind of not right there, but a little bit, a little bit more west. And I remember it was like I could vomit. It's so much money. And but I could do it. I could do the payments a month. I had the down payment saved. I think that house, I'm not shitting you. I remember because I bought that house. I got married for the first time in 2009. So I think I bought that house. We were closing on the house. I remember. So it's less than 20. I think that house is worth like $3 million. It's insane.
But
It's
think
insane.
about I think about like what my parents my parents came here, like they're immigrants. They came here in the mid 70s, like
Mhm.
not a lick of English, like the
Yep.
whole story, right? So my dad was an uncredentialed engineer and he wasn't going to be credentialed here. So he drove a cab and he put my mom through school and he put us through university. But on that salary, like he bought a house in a safe neighborhood,
Yes.
like so we can go to good schools. Like all of that was possible. And I'm not saying that it was easy for them at a time, but they
Of
bought their
course.
first house in Thornhill, a couple of years after even getting here, and their second house a couple of years after I was born, in the same neighborhood where those houses are now, 1.8, $2 million, and
But I'm not
that was their starter
suggesting like
home
it shouldn't be easy, but it
within
should be
reach.
a dream that is reachable.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything in this life is easy. And I think, work hard, like working hard should pay off. So I think, that's the
That's why we
difference.
need to change. Like that is the number one reason
I
that I hear
know.
from every young person. Like the next 5 days of this election is about change, 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 change. If you want the
Yes.
same thing, and it's changed so you can afford food, and it's changed so you can afford a house, it's changed so you can have safe streets. If you want the same
And
thing to
being
happen,
safe. There was a shooting last night. Melissa, I'm born and raised in this country, in this city. My parents would say to me, come home before dark when I was a kid. Like, and yes, we didn't have phones and yes, blah, blah, blah. But like, and I actually don't want my
are you gonna tell
children.
the story about how you walked to school with no shoes on
Like,
and how
no, my best friend picked me up on her banana bike. Her name is Morgan, and we would go together every day. And actually, my mom in grade two, I remember she hired a grade five to walk me home. My mom worked, and so it was what is happening in my own neighborhood, what is happening in my own city, the fact that I put a ghost immobilizer with, I don't even know what that means, on my car. We leave the keys at the front. I sleep with bear spray in my nights. Like I know I'm laughing. It's not funny. Like I don't, and the advice from the police is we'll just let them take the car. I have a friend in my neighborhood who was held up in his home at gunpoint with his baby sleeping upstairs. This is a couple months ago. And nobody gives a shit. And it's just like, I don't know if everyone's so overwhelmed by tragedy because that might be it. Where every single day it's like, pick your tragedy right now. And so people just stop feeling. But this is the safety that I'm scared. I've never felt, I used to be scared of aliens, right? I couldn't fight them. They weren't human. Like I used to be scared of other things, but I'm actually scared living here. I don't like sleeping in the house alone anymore. Talk to me.
it's not an uncommon story, and like it pains me that in this country that you would feel unsafe, but it seems that that
I live in
after
a
10
Jewish neighborhood
years,
too,
yeah, no, well, nobody feels safe anymore. Like people
and
are
yeah, it's not
being
even just that.
assaulted in broad daylight. I think that religious institutions are coming under attack. Police are telling people, like you said, to leave their
Can you
car keys
imagine?
at their
Just leave
front
your
to
car,
make it
leave
easier.
your car keys at the front.
So,
My
but then
friend
then we
was
have to
held up
talk
at
about
gunpoint.
why this is happening, Allie. Like police officers, unions, policy analysts, all the smartest people are saying the exact same thing. It's because of our weak catch and release policies that turn repeat offenders loose on our streets with absolutely no consequences for their criminal action. So here's this one bill. So the government, the federal government is responsible for the criminal code. There's a piece of legislation that requires offenders to be released the soonest possible under the least restrictive conditions. So somebody who stole a car over and over can serve their sentence at home. That's another bill that exists. Like this is sort of like, I don't know what the scientific word is, but like it's cuckoo bananas to allow this to continue to happen. And the crimes that we're seeing are a product of this. People stealing a car in the morning, getting arrested, getting released, doing the same thing by dinner time. And we've all seen this. So here's the plan, and I'll run through it really quickly. We're going to immediately repeal the catch and release policies. We're going to impose life sentences on anyone who's convicted of serious crimes like
Yep.
human, gun, fentanyl trafficking. We're not talking about 19-year-old kid that makes a mistake. We're going to create a new criminal offense for all of the women watching this, particularly on assaulting an intimate partner, and pass that into law to require the strictest possible bail conditions.
Well,
Um,
1 in 5, I think the number is 1 in 5 Canadian women are being abused by
and the,
their partner at home.
And the numbers are staggering on violent crime. Got a 50% increase in that, 116% increase in gun crime, a 250% increase in hate crime in the city, like in the city that you grew up in the city that I grew up with.
But the
We're gonna
same laws, by the way, that the liberals are like the laws haven't changed. It's not like, people are scared. Do you know, Melissa? Do you know something? Do you know my husband's truck got stolen? And he stole it back. I was gonna kill him. We put a tracker and he's like, the police aren't gonna do anything. And he called them and again, I don't blame the police. I think they're overwhelmed. I think their hands are tied. I think they have to do, whatever it is. He went and stole it back like a lunatic. because that's the twilight zone that we're sitting in right now. Yes, I know you don't condone this. Trust me, it was a fight, neither do I. But here's where we are.
Yeah, look,
It's kind of
this
badass,
is
but like don't do that again, Martin,
this
ever.
is and I suspect that this isn't the first time this person has stolen a car.
Oh,
It's not a casual crime. We're also going to pass a three strikes you're out law to ban bail, parole, and house arrest for
good.
repeat serious criminals,
That
and
seems so
restore the power to
straightforward.
judges who are the ones with their hands tied on all of this. Making sure that like murderers. Okay, so here's the thing. So if you commit murder of multiple people, and there's countless examples of this, unfortunately. But a guy who kills, in Quebec City, who kills six people at a mosque, we're going to make sure that those life sentences are consecutive, so 25 years rather than
Right, so he's not
having
out
a
in 2020.
discount on murders based on the number of people. And that's something that the court struck down, and it's something that we've said very openly that we will challenge and make law with the powers that we have as the federal government.
I mean, hearing you makes so much sense to me. And again, I wanted to do this because I'm not coming from a place of somebody who's so well versed politically. I really just tried to educate myself in the best way I can recently. So I read that you're going to defund the CBC. What does that mean? Why? Can you explain this to me?
So here's the thing. I don't think that the government has a place in funding the publication of news content, particularly when other news isn't funded. So we've got a lot of private and independent news outlets who stand on their own 2 feet by offering content that Canadians actually read, and they can
Mhm.
sell advertising to or for their readership to be able to read that and generate revenue. There's a couple things. Defunding the CBC simply means cutting off their $1.4 billion, to which much of that goes to executive bonuses. At the peril, I think, of other news coverage, and we're going to keep parts of it because there's Radio Canada. They provide a RadCan provides a service for francophone and certainly small communities, and we recognize that the CBC is a unique role to play in those communities. So not touching that, but in terms of the news content of CBC, defunding it means exactly what the commitment means. It means cutting off the $1.4 billion of tax dollars that go to the CBC for their English language news.
Just a couple more things. Healthcare. So one of my staff members became pregnant and a couple years ago, she couldn't find a doctor. Her family doctor had moved away. She could not get, I called a friend of mine who happens to be a family doctor and I said, I need you to take a new patient. Can you do me a favor? She needs a doctor. And she said, of course I'll do it. But it was so crazy to me, how challenging it is, to find a doctor that we're sitting in, again, 27 hours of emergency care. And, my friend needed to get an MRI on her knee, and the wait list was like 11 months.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, I know, again, I want everyone listening, things can't be changed overnight. And anyone it's like when somebody says to me, I want my house built in 6 months. And you know what I say to them? Anyone who tells you they can do it is lying.
Right.
Okay? Anyone that tells you who's doing it, they are, I'm gonna get all these. I built a house in 6 months. It's like,
Yeah. How long does it take to build the house? Tell us.
2 years, 2 years.
I'm
Okay.
If we can,
Sometimes
if
18
we can
months.
make housing more affordable,
I
we'll build a
work in
lot of houses
luxury,
for you.
okay? Put me on, I'm happy. I will donate my time to affordable housing. I swear to God, but right now I work in luxury, so the details are different. So, when people are calling me, but what I'm saying is, regardless of the building the house or whatever, is that people tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
And it is stupid to think that the mess that the country is in can be fixed completely overnight. But there have to be steps. Like it is impossible to become a doctor here if you were, even provincially to move around. So can you talk to me
Yeah,
about
and that's exactly where we do play a role as the federal government. Like there's a whole bunch of jurisdictional issues here, but I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it from the sense where there's some things that the federal government could do.
yes.
One, there's a couple issues at play. One, I think we got to get our federal debt under control. We spend more on debt repayment than we do on healthcare and in this country. Like the line item is higher than we transfer to the provinces for healthcare, and I think that's that is like borderline criminal. So we've got a lot of people in this country, doctors, nurses, therapists, more who can't work because their credentials aren't recognized. So there's like an adage in Toronto. I'm sure you've heard people say this: if you want a doctor, call an Uber, because our doctors are actually driving Ubers, and it's absolutely insane. So we're going to implement a Blue Seal program to immediately recognize the credentials of 20,000 healthcare workers, or 20,000 doctors. There's 32,000 nurses also. So if you got your education in Germany or the US or Australia, then it's probably just as good as if you got it in Canada. And we got to make sure that that you're credentialed. We need to improve the guidance on like clearly what you need to do so you can get to work as quickly as possible. And I think that alleviates some of the wait times. That healthcare should never be a call-in favor for someone. The other thing that it's hard not to talk about healthcare without talking about the immigration crisis.
100%. And that's what I was gonna, and I want to preface this by saying my grandparents were immigrants. Your parents were immigrants. This country is built and founded on
Correct.
immigrants. I love all people. I actually like for so long would feel so proud. I actually feel emotional even in talking about this. I'm sorry, but I'd go away and I'd say like I'm Canadian, and like to me that meant like I believe in the rights for all people and we love everybody. And I don't care if you're this or you're that or, whatever it is. Sorry, I don't mean to be emotional, but it really hits me. It makes me really upset. And so when we talk about immigration, when I talk about immigration, it isn't for lack of loving all people. It is that we are living in, like, we are giving so much money to other countries. And we have people, like you said, who are tying their shoes together, who are lining up. Our food crisis has never been bigger. And I also think there's some scary people that are being allowed into this country. And all of those things together, when I at least think about immigration and how we need to tighten it up, it is for not loving humanity or for believing that, one of the things I love, we have Little Italy and we have Indian neighborhoods and Jewish neighborhoods and Asian neighborhoods, and I love it. Talk to me about what needs to change.
It's
And
like
you feel how I feel in that respect.
it's hard to
It needs to change.
it's hard to listen, particularly on the point of Canadian pride. It's a story that I hear so often. And look, let's just be honest. We're in the same age group, and I don't think there's a day that goes by or a conversation that doesn't go by where people in your own peer group are looking elsewhere because they're running out of options in Canada. So whether it's
Yes,
the
I
US
joined the board of Huron University, and all the parents, their kids can't. When we grew up, there was no talk of leaving Canada.
correct.
Maybe you go to Vancouver, go to Montreal, like I don't know, but maybe
Just for a brief time
I
until
went to
you come back
Europe for
to
the summer, I don't know, but no, and then the talk of it now, I'm like, this is my country.
yeah.
I'm not leaving. So,
That's
and my
that's
husband
exactly that's
immigrated
exactly
here,
it's a
and you know what?
disheartening conversation. In fact, a scary one because it's our job creators and our entrepreneurs and all of the
You
people
need
that you
these
would
people to
want
stay for our
yeah,
economy. My husband immigrated here. It was hard, and it should have been hard,
right.
you
And it was
know?
hard for many who stood in line and did all of the things that need to be done. We go through immigration cases in our office all the time, and it takes a long time, and rightfully so. But here you don't have to preface this by saying that we're a welcoming country. Of course, we know we're a welcoming country. This country is built by immigrants, but there
I'm
has to be an
speaking to
adult
idiots.
conversation
Sorry. I'm
about
just, yeah.
about it getting out of control. And the very fact that you intake more people than you're resourced for, meaning more people than we built houses for, or more people than there are healthcare spots for, or more people than there are jobs for, well, then you're not doing it properly. We had the best immigration system in the world. People studied our system. It was the system that brought in my parents, and probably the system that brought in your husband, depending on when he came. And it was a system by which
No,
you
he was recent, but it
oh,
was
he's a recent guy,
he was lucky because he was 29. So he got to come in, you know what I mean, and work. And then like we had to go through, it was a couple of years.
right?
And also we got married. We really had to prove it. Friends had to write letters. Like it was a whole thing. And he's actually quite prideful about it. But, you know, other people have told me they've stood it very proudly, becoming citizens. And they felt they were the only person in the room who had sort of climatized to being Canadian and who had felt proud they were there. They're watching a room of people who have no interest in Canada.
Yeah,
And
there's
that was disheartening to
there's
them.
immigration and I think there's citizenship, and the two are very much related. But here's what on immigration, we're going to make sure that the number of
I
people
told
that
you I
are
don't know what
brought.
I'm talking about. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. This. It's important. It's not. It's an important distinction because I think it'll answer both of your questions. So
Okay.
one, we're going to bring in the number of people that match the resources that you have in terms of housing, in terms of healthcare, in terms of jobs, and we'll never exceed the number of housing starts that there are. That's how we're going to tie the number together. And of course, the safety and security element of this, making sure that there is proper screening. But the citizenship point of this is a good point that you brought up. Like, look at what we've done in the last number of years as a country, and by we I mean the Liberal government has done. Like, we flew the flags at half mast for a couple of years. We took symbols out of our passports. We put citizenship ceremonies online. Like, of course, that diminishes citizenship. And all of a sudden, when we're under threat from the South, you wrap yourself in the Canadian flag and pretend none of that happened. And it's not so easy to erase because the feeling, the pride of being Canadian is tied up in those symbols and tied up in those gestures. The Canadian citizenship ceremony was like one of the proudest days of my parents' life, and they've since passed, but they thanked this country for everything that they had. Now, of course, there's other, like, I graduated and I got married and there was bat mitzvahs and all of that. Those are happy days too. But citizenship is one of those things that, like, they won like the lottery when they got out of the hellhole that they grew up in, which was communist country. It was abundance here, and so things like the anthem, things like symbols in your passport, things like putting me through French education were such a point of pride for them and integrating into Canadian society that doesn't happen by accident. It's successive governments that made this a priority. So I want to see a conservative government make this a priority, and it's exactly what's in our plan.
You should
Making
be proud to be here. And you should be proud to the values that this country holds. I worry every day, Melissa. Like I worry for my children. I don't know what they're growing up in. I think there's so many young people. Why should the debt matter? Why should, immigration matter to me? Why should all of these things matter? And honestly, they didn't really matter to me before. And I think it's not because I didn't care, it's because I was in this bubble of, the country. I now I see, I mean, obviously, of course, perspective is different and where we're at as a country is different, but I think we're faced with these things that we can't run away from, and that like I want to fight for this country, and I want to fight for real leaders. I listen to Pierre, I feel inspired. I listen to you, I feel inspired. I want to be inspired, like to have this country back. And I feel like people, if you didn't care, if you've never cared, you just really need to care now. And I sort of, I mean, I have there's a million questions. We have tent cities everywhere,
for
you
sure.
know, um, worried about safety. I'm worried about hate crimes as a Jew in this country.
I
And
know you've used your
so
platform a lot to speak about the 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 absurdity of what has happened in our streets, the marches, the fire bombings into businesses, the gunshots into schools, and frankly the relative silence from every government everywhere in this country about these things happening. And leadership does come from the top, and I assure you that the Jewish people are not alone. And
I actually know that here's the funny thing. I actually believe that the loudest voices are from the fewest. I think that most people, I really believe this in my soul. I think most people understand this is disgusting. I think most people understand that or believe that they don't want this, that they don't agree with this. I think that a minority of people is speaking loud because they're speaking really loud. The question is, why aren't they shut down?
well, I think
And
first of all, there needs to be consequences
correct.
to these actions, right? When
Marching through
you're
my streets, intimidating my children, death threats to me, like, and again, I'm not hateful. I love everyone. And what's crazy is that I actually think people don't understand. Maybe it's Jews now. It doesn't end there. These people are radical and they are not just coming for Jews. And what is happening in like, they're not going after people walking down the street who are Russian. They're not going after people who are walking down the street who are from the Congo. They're not talking about the thousands of children stolen from Ukraine. They're not talking about the 100,000 bodies in Syria. You know, it's just us. And I think now it's just us. And then something else is going to happen. Sorry, I'm very obviously I get
no,
triggered,
look, I
uh,
can feel the pain. I've seen the
emotional.
pain
Um, and
in
it's
the community.
painful
Yeah.
because this was supposed to be a problem of the past. And I have watched, I know you were at the Nova exhibit last night. And, I watched Pierre go through that exhibit as he should, as any leader should for any group, not just the Jews. But we are lost. We have lost our way. And when it comes to this, what can you do?
So one, I think I think you need to see sort of principle over popularity in terms of a position, and one of moral clarity that you're always going to stand on the right side of history. And I think that's what you get with me. You get with that Pierre. We get that with conservatives, and I think you've seen others, frankly, speak from both sides of their mouths in different places, saying different things to different communities. We've seen the government institutionalize anti-Semitism by funding like people like Laith Marouf. He was an anti-racism trainer in the government that was said the most vitriolic things, and it's your tax dollars that are paying for that. It's hiring people like Birju Ditani, who's an apologist for terror and a known anti-Semite, on to lead things like the Human Rights Commission. It's being silent in the face of all of these things that are exact reason that are the exact reason why you feel the pain that you feel. Like those days are going to be behind us. Like we will never
Better
subsidize
be.
anti-Semitism. We'll make
Better.
sure that those who commit these crimes, first of all, if you're not a citizen, that you are not welcome here in Canada, and that you were told to go to go back to from where you came from if you're committing these crimes, and actually have consequences for this kind of behavior. There's no reason that any community anywhere in the country, whether you are Jewish or Hindu or Sikh or Muslim, that you should live in any kind of fear. But disproportionately, this has been happening to Jews, and politicians right across the board, particularly liberal politicians in this country, have excused it. And those days are over.
Or
That
said
I can assure
nothing.
you.
Or danced at Taylor Swift while Montreal was on fire. You know,
Oh, we've seen
like you
images
said,
of Canadian
leadership
flags burned.
it comes from the top.
Sure.
Like as a parent, I want to show my children what is right and what is wrong. And ultimately, it's their choice in their lives to do what they want. But seeing somebody that you admire, seeing somebody in a place of leadership behave the way that you should behave, regardless of how many laws you can change, that is, and who stands so clear. Sorry, my children are screaming. I apologize, but the morality that you show, the morality that Pierre shows, it never wavers, and strength doesn't waver. Clarity doesn't waver, and I'm grateful to see that. I have two more things.
Okay.
Number one, this is a big one. People think that the Republican Party and the Conservative Party are the same. Can you please explain why they're not?
I'm a Canadian conservative. First of all, I'm Canadian, and we'll put this country first all the time. I'm not part of any other party. I never have been. We have very distinct countries and distinct cultures and distinct political parties. And the comparison is, I think something that the Liberals want to talk about because they don't want to talk
Yeah, they
about
keep
the
saying
disastrous
Pierre's
record.
Trump, and we're not talking about Trump. It doesn't matter in this context of this particular conversation. They think that the Republicans and the Conservatives are the same.
I like look. If I was the Liberal, I wouldn't want to talk about why 2 million people are eating in a food bank. Why 9 out of 10 young people don't ever think that they'll be able to afford a home. Why 49,000 people in this country have died of fentanyl overdose. Why criminals are let out of jail to repeat the violence on the victims, and why we protect the criminals. I wouldn't want to talk about that either.
I agree, but tell me the differences. Name me three differences if you can.
Look, the founding principles are of the Conservative Party are entirely different from any other party, frankly, that I know. I think there are conservative parties that share some similarities. The way to think about the Canadian Conservative Party. We are the party of freedom, and the party where you should be able to do whatever you want. You should be able to work hard, buy a home, live a good life in a safe neighborhood, protected by a strong military, under a plowed flag. That is what the Conservative Party. But I know that as a Canadian and as a conservative, and as somebody who wants to restore the promise of Canada, I will continue doing that every single day. And I've been a member of this party for a very long time. I was never a member of another party, and I like to say this. I grew up in a mixed marriage. My mom was a liberal for a long time, and my dad was a conservative, and I ended up on the conservative side, and then we slowly but surely brought my mom over in the mid 2000s.
And if you could say just one thing to our parents' generation who are so hard fast voting liberal, I personally feel like people just aren't critically thinking. It's like, well, I've always voted liberal, so I'm voting liberal. What would you want to say to them?
I would say, like, we have lost a decade in this country. And I would say that the last 10 years was about the Liberals and their scandals and their overspending, and the fact that they've doubled housing costs, and they've put 2 million people in line at a food bank. Like, those are a direct outcome of the policies. The next 10 years has to be about people in this country. It has to be about restoring the promise of Canada. It has to be about being able to afford a home, cleaning up our streets, making sure that food is affordable, making sure that we're developing the resources that we have beneath our feet, making sure that we can stand on our own 2 feet. As an economic superpower, we should be the richest country in the world. And I ask all of those people to look at the last 10 years and ask themselves, if you want the same MPs and the same ministers and the same policies that led us into this to lead us into the next 10 years. This election is about change. It's about change for the younger generation. It's about change for the generation that built this country. It is about change for a country that should be the richest in the world, and that is not, because we've squandered our potential. And I'm not going to let that happen again.
Amen. we can't get too much into the environmental side of things, although I heard you speak, and let me just say, an environmentalist was in the crowd, and just correct me if I'm wrong. Her point was, we've built a world where we need oil. We just don't live without it, right? And in Canada, we have everything. We have everything, except we're importing everything that we need, which is actually less green than accessing it in a responsible way ourselves. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there might be a world in which we're without oil. I have no idea when that is, but
I don't
hopefully
know, but it's
the
not
last
tomorrow, and I don't know, and I hope there is, and I hope my children live like that.
I hope
But
that the last barrel of oil ever produced is a Canadian barrel. It's produced more ethically, it's produced cleaner, and it provides jobs for our people. Now we've got
I
to
agree.
build pipelines and make sure that we take our resources out of the ground to displace all of that dictator and despot oil that is funding and fueling the wars that are killing our own people. Like, we have a real responsibility and a real opportunity in this country. And bills like C-69, it's the anti-pipeline legislation. Every company who wants to build pipelines in this country, every energy company who wants to ship oil, believes that that bill is detrimental to building pipelines in this country, and it's the
But
liberals.
will it be governed so that it's safe, that it's as green as possible? I mean, like, I don't
Well,
really
look,
even understand. I
I
don't
think
even
we
understand
have
what I'm talking
strong.
about.
I think we have strong assessments, and we have a very strong case to make for Canadians to make sure that we're reliant, that we grow our economy, that we help others in Europe. Like, we could drastically. We can drastically change the reliance of Vladimir Putin, who is actively in a war against an unjustified war against Ukraine, by cutting off the oil and selling it, or gas, and selling it elsewhere in Europe. Like, he's dependent on European oil. We can be that European oil. We have tremendous
Think we could
opportunities
do
in
it
our.
greener? Do you think that's a priority for our
Yeah, look,
planet?
I don't think that the two things are mutually exclusive. I think that we can have cleaner, greener energy through hydroelectric and expanding of tidal energy, carbon capture and storage. All of these technologies. You can do these things at the same time. It's not one or the other. And I'm a big believer that a grown-up country that is that is like Canada, particularly with all of the potential that we have, can walk and chew gum at the same time.
If you want to say five things, just five things quickly to sum it up to that kid who's just gonna, maybe see this for a minute, to, the elderly person that hasn't decided yet, to anyone, what are just these five things that you
I'll give you a broad stroke. I think
give me a stroke?
if you're thinking about the next election, think about it in terms of change. Do not allow the same people who have destroyed this country, who have put 2 million people eating at food banks, who have allowed crime out of control in our neighborhoods, who have doubled the cost of housing, to do it all over again. If you want to restore the promise of Canada for the future, make sure that you can afford a home in a safe neighborhood, surrounded. If you want to work hard and get ahead, and do everything right and get that promise, the promise that my parents had, and the promise that they gave me. If you want to make sure that we have a strong military, resources that can be shipped around the world, if you want to grow the potential of what Canada can be, then vote for change and vote Conservative.